The global pandemic started in 2020 and it brought the world to a standstill. This inevitably had an impact on greenhouse gas emissions. This pivotal point in time began the journey of nations working together to develop new policies and technologies that enabled renewable energy to be accessible to all, shifting the climate crisis away from being what we know as a black elephant issue. My name is Emma Holmes and I'm going to be giving you an insight into how the live music industry looks in 2050, with everyone having access to clean renewable energy. In 2022, it was discovered if you group the world into 24 regions and transitioned each region into using only wind, water and solar energy, the world would then be running on fully renewable energy by 2050. With the world changing at a faster pace than ever before, the importance of planning for the future became extremely evident. Rather than relying on memory to plan for the future, we used future thinking, which really allowed us to understand that the events industry would change drastically, and the needs of the consumer and client would differ from what we knew in 2022. When planning for the future of the industry, strategic foresight was a vital part of the process, focusing on the push and pull of the future to help us ensure the longevity of the events industry. This meant acknowledging the natural push and how having access to renewable energy would make a huge difference, while also being aware of the pull and that we needed to continue to be mindful of the carbon output during the transition period. Looking at the consumer trends of 2022 while also being conscious of our scope sensitivity aided us in being able to estimate what the industry would look like and what consumers would want to look for in events. In 2022, a large majority of consumers had strong feelings about sustainability and wanting to live a zero waste lifestyle. This of course gave us some reassurance that the world having access to clean renewable energy would have a positive impact on the industry. Now that the events industry has the ability to be carbon free and environmentally friendly, this is no longer a unique selling point to consumers. It has become extremely evident that consumers are looking for shared immersive experiences that create long-lasting memories. Understanding this want and ensuring that events are designed in a way that will provoke a sense of belonging has become a vital part of event design and development. This has had an impact on almost all recreational events. With event creators not having to concentrate on their sustainability status, it has allowed event designers and marketers to really focus on content. Limits to how creative we can be have become somewhat non-existent. Whatever the client wants can almost always be achieved without having to worry about the carbon output. Although the overall outcome of the shift to renewable energy had a positive impact on the events industry, it did sadly highlight the errors and misinformation to consumers. During the beginning of the transition period, the evidence of mass greenwashing was being brought to light, which caused a monumental divide between the events industry and consumers. The consumers' understanding of what it meant to be sustainable was evolving, meaning large brands and companies could no longer get away with greenwashing their events. In order to rebuild the relationship between the consumers and the large event companies, governments implemented mandatory regulations that involved biophysical testing and ecological footprint analysis. This measures the environmental impact of each event. The results must be published prior to any event and be easily accessible to the public. This made greenwashing impossible and helped to rebuild the trust between the two. The live music sector is one of the sectors that the shift to renewable energy had the biggest impact on. Although the larger, more notable artists did not suffer, small upcoming artists struggled to keep up with the demand for extravagant, outlandish events. Not having the connections or resources to execute an event of that creative level meant that the drive to attend these smaller scale events was diminishing rapidly. This pushed smaller artists and event organisers to work together to really explore and understand what consumers wanted from these smaller scale events. Understanding that attendees of these events would be looking for a sense of belonging, the importance of inclusion and diversity was becoming more significant than ever before. This has allowed upcoming artists to use their limited access to clean renewable energy to make their events fully accessible to everyone. One of the biggest adaptations the upcoming music scene needed and wanted to address was ensuring that deaf and disabled people could have easy access to their events. Being able to sustainably hire and transport British Sign Language interpreters to live music events was one of the biggest turnarounds, and now in 2050 it is a regulation that the industry must ensure all events have a British Sign Language interpreter present, allowing the live music industry to have a more diverse audience. This was not the only change that happened to the live music industry to ensure it was a more diverse and inclusive place while also remaining fully sustainable. Although they were speaking on the climate crisis as a whole, Faye Cucett once said, "Looking at the root causes, we can then find solutions." This quote was extremely influential and helped the upcoming and independent side of the music industry focus on the inclusivity issues and address them accordingly. Looking at research from the 2000s Olympic and Paralympic Games, we could see exactly how they made those events accessible and apply those practices to the live music industry of 2050. Looking at the accessibility planning framework for the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, you can see in order to be accessible, you must look at all aspects of an event. From venue selection to transport links to how the event is ticketed, plays a vital role in how accessible an event really is. All of these suggestions are now being implemented into the live music industry in a sustainable way, allowing the sector to become fully accessible and inclusive to all. The impact this has had on smaller scale music events has been extremely positive, allowing these artists to continue to progress without having the creative resources or connections that larger artists have. The importance of foresight and future thinking has been monumental over the past 30 years. Recognising this and using it to our advantage has allowed us to better understand events and consumers' needs. It has also ensured the industry can remain resilient and progressive in our ever-changing world. Although we are currently in a great place as an industry, there is always room for improvement, and even now in 2050, there are still new policies and regulations being implemented frequently. Limits to the amount of energy event organisers can use is one of the things currently being explored. This is to help ensure longevity and success within the industry. The live music industry is now an inclusive, diverse and accessible sector, consistently improving and using the power of clean renewable energy to ensure the sector is remaining relevant while proactively preparing for the future using the future thinking skills acquired over the last 30 years.